Hello everyone. For this video I'm going to be replacing the valve cover gasket on the driver's side of my Chevy Avalanche 5.3 liter V8 because it is showing some signs of leaking, not badly, and I want to jump on it before it gets too bad. This job requires simple tools and should go reasonably quickly. We're going to need a socket 10 millimeter and a socket 8 millimeter. I think one of them has to be a deep socket. I think the other one doesn't have to be, but I'm going to use a deep socket on both. Screwdriver possibly to remove one electrical connector, and of course the replacement gasket, which is, if you can see that, that's the part number. Supplier is Rock Auto, not a sponsor. And also we have these grommets, which they only came in a pack of 8, but these grommets are for the bolts that hold down the valve cover, and it's recommended that they be replaced, and so we're going to replace the grommets. They're not expensive, so might as well. But before we get to removing the valve cover, we have to do something else first. This is some of the wire loom off the Avalanche that was covering the valve cover, and as you can see, this wire loom is disintegrated by about half from engine heat, whatnot. If you know enough about these 5.3 liter engines, you probably have come across others complaining about the crumbly wire loom on these older motors, and in my case my Chevy Avalanche is now 9 years old and it has 111,000 miles on it. So I elected to get some replacement wire loom and fix this before getting into the valve cover replacement. And the reason why is because I did not want any debris. For instance, you can see from the shininess, this is new. There's some of the wire loom over there is new. Well, taking the valve cover off, I didn't want the crumbly loom to fall into the rocker arm area. It's not metallic, and I might be able to get it out with a vacuum, but we don't want to get into that hassle, so I cleaned up the wire loom first. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the coil pack assembly off in one shot. This connector has to be disconnected, and then we're going to lay back the coil pack assembly. That will give us exposure to the valve cover, which should come off pretty easily, and then clean it up and put the new gasket on the valve cover and button it all back up. So not a complicated job. Now the passenger side is a little bit more complicated because there's a lot of stuff that sits on top of the valve cover that makes it a little bit more of a fiddly job, but fortunately on this side not so much. So we're going to get started. I'm going to do my best to try and get good angles for the removal piece of this, because I have noticed that on quite a few other videos, and there are a lot of videos out there on YouTube already regarding valve cover gasket replacement, and you know, when the time comes and people are unfastening bolts and whatnot, you get to see people's back more so than the work. And I'm guilty of that myself on a couple of videos, and one video in particular infamously famous for how bad that video is in terms of most of the work that you see is concealed by my back. So I'm going to do my best to avoid that and try and get some good angles here so you can actually see what I'm doing here. If it doesn't work out, then you'll never see this video. So if you are watching this video, that means it came out acceptable enough for me to publish it. So let me set up this camera so it's in a fixed position, and hopefully the lighting is adequate, and we'll get to work. Okay. Be back in a sec. Okay, my very first step here is I'm going to take this vacuum line off just to make a little bit more room for somebody who is not recording this. You shouldn't really need to do this, but because down here it does get relatively close to the coil pack, I'm going to remove it for the purposes of hopefully creating a better video. I can just get this thing out of the way. Okay, and then we'll just tuck that up on top of the motor somewhere. And so we have a clearer view. The next thing, we're going after this connector here. The wire loom's on top. So we're going to get the wire loom out of the way. There's a fastener here. We just tug up. And it should come right off. See how it sits on the bolt? Like so. And so we'll try and tuck that out of the way as well for ease of access. Okay, now in order to get this connector off, we have a pin that needs to come off first. This is a little bit dirty, but if you can see this device here with the little plastic lanyard, this has to come off like so, and then we disconnect the connector, pull that tab up and wiggle it loose, move the wire out of the way, and that should be the only wire that we need to replace. Now we can remove the coil pack as an assembly, and we're going to just fold it over. Let me get the camera reset up and we'll be right back. Okay, camera reposition. Now we have to get this wire loom out of the way and this wire loom out of the way. And for this wire loom, you see I've got a little pry thing. It's also connected, sitting on top of a nut, so just pop it off like so. And this one comes off with a simple little tug, and that should be enough. I'm going to find something to tie this over so that it's out of our way. And I think what also I'm going to do is I'm going to shut the camera off. I don't have an air compressor anymore. It died a classic Chinese death. I'm going to take a vacuum cleaner and I'm going to run up in here. I see some debris back here, so I'm going to take a vacuum cleaner. I'm going to suck that stuff up and clean it up. So again, we don't have any chance of debris falling into the rocker arm chamber. So give me a minute or two to do all that, and I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. I've done the vacuuming. Now I'm going to do a little PV blaster on these nuts. 3, 4, and away in the back. 5. Okay. Now I have to get the, let's see if I can show you guys, the PVC valve way in the back needs to come off where I'm pointing, so I'm going to try and maneuver so that you guys can see that a little bit better. And let me see if I can reposition myself so that you guys can see me remove that. I'll be right back. Okay, let me see if I can't. Nope, I gotta climb on the car. Hang on. PVC valve. Oop. Try to wear gloves to keep your hands clean, and then there we go. Okay, now let's try for some bolts. Let me reset the camera. Okay, let's get this coil pack assembly off. I decided to switch to a 3/8 ratchet just for a little bit better leverage. But these nuts, as you can see, are not very tight. So we'll, sorry if the camera's moving around, I'm trying to give you guys a good angle here to see what I'm doing. There's 3 and 4, and we'll leave that 5th one way in the back by the PVC valve for last, because I'm gonna have to climb over the engine for that. So we do want to try and be as careful as possible not to have these nuts drop into the nether regions of the engine. And see, the stud comes out with the 2, which is fine. This one's the same. Number 3. Okay, let me reposition the camera here. I'll be back. Okay, I gotta plumb on the engine for this. At least I think I have to. How other people do it is up to them. Okay, one more, and then the coil pack is going to be free. Not quite. Okay. Total of 5 studs. And now we should be able to just fold the coil pack over. As you can see, a little bit more oil than I expected. So this gasket replacement is timely. I see a little debris in there. I'm going to go back over it with a vacuum before we tackle the valve cover bolts. I'll be right back. Okay, time to remove the valve cover bolts. Is there an order? Well, we'll start with the inner ones first. Okay, the 2 inner ones are loose. And then, once again, I have to crawl on top of the engine. Oops, sorry, I'll get the camera back in a second. This one needs the socket yet. Okay, let me reposition the camera so I have both hands, then we'll pop this cover off. Screwdriver maybe? I don't want to mar the surface. So, thinking that's not a good idea. Maybe this. There we go. Now let's take this over to the workbench and take a look at it. Before we move off, let's get a close-up look of the rocker arms. Not too shabby for 111,000 miles in 9 years. I'm going to go get a plastic trash bag and cover that up just to be safe. Fresh trash bag, just to make sure that no bugs or other debris can fall down in there. So valve covers on the workbench. We're going to clean this up a little bit before we put it back on the car. Something to point out though, this is a 2013 Black Diamond Chevy Avalanche LTZ. I have almost, without fail, and almost meaning that there are only 2 instances that I can recall where I have not changed the oil every 3,000 miles, even though most people seem to agree that when you're using the synthetic oil, you can let it run for at least 5,000 miles. And I just find it very interesting that we've got quite a bit of buildup on the valve cover here, despite of my attention to oil changes. So we're not going to reuse that, since obviously that is the source of our leaky troubles, or at least I assume it is. And we are going to, let's see how we do with some brake cleaner first. A rag. And let's see. Now, unfortunately, this is a no frills channel, so we don't get any sound effects with our, where are we here? Down, up, there we are. Let's try it again. See? No sound effects like Erico. Sorry about that. But I think that might be trademarked by Eric anyway, so probably best that we not. Oh yeah, look at that. I could use a brush. Do I have a brush anywhere? Sure, I've got one somewhere. Let me see if I can't find a brush. Okay, I've cleaned up the valve cover. Nice and shiny, as you can see. I used a combination of brake parts cleaner, and I also happen to have some AC Delco engine cleaner, which is good at dissolving carbon, so I used on them both. I generously sprayed inside this cavity that runs along here to the PCV valve, which is under here, until it ran as clear as I could get it. It didn't run crystal clear, but rather than it running black, it ran clearish brown. And I also ran brake parts cleaner and engine cleaner through the PCV valve itself until it ran fairly clear. So hopefully, if there were any PCV related issues that I wasn't aware of, that they have been resolved. So as you can see, all cleaned up all the way around the perimeter, and also on the other side, all of the grease and grime, or 99% of it, is gone. Now I put these grommets on, the valve cover bolts, and notice that do I have enough light here? I tried to copy the way that it looked when it came off, which is that the grommet was protruding a little bit past this inner tube, if you will, or bushing, or whatever you want to call it, between the actual bolt and this casing, I guess I'll call it. So the end of that casing is a little bit recessed. That's the way that I found it. Whether it's right or not, I'm not exactly sure. I don't recall seeing anybody else talk about that. So word to the wise. And so we got to put these back on, and then the cover is going. Then we put the gasket on. Actually, we should. No, yeah, we should put this on first. And I wonder if these were supposed to go on first. The grommets were supposed to go on first. Oh, they go on. I need both hands for this. I'll be back. Looks like those grommets want to go on first. So there's one. There's two. Or three, and there's four, and then like so. It's not all the way through. I'm just trying to demonstrate. It's kind of hard to do this one-handed. There we go, it's through. Doesn't work one-handed, guys. I'm gonna have to. I need both hands. I'll be back. Okay. All four valve cover bolts are on. Here's what they look like on the back side. It seems right. We'll find out soon enough if it's not. And so all we have to do is put the valve cover gasket on and this thing's ready to reinstall. And I'm going to do that. Okay, got to move quickly here because the battery on this recorder, this video camcorder is not the best, and I don't want to keep having to stop and recharge. So I'm going to try and get this done. So it's time to put the valve cover back on. Okay, so one more thing to point out before I put this thing back on. You see this? I can't see. Hang on. See this? This indicates that this is the newer version of the valve cover. The older version just had a little circle a little bit farther away, and this is supposed to reduce oil consumption, which is a bit of an issue for this truck. It uses more than a quart every 3,000 miles, so I just wanted to point that out, that this vehicle does have the oil consumption reduction modification already. It came from the factory. And so for whatever that's worth, now let's put this thing on. Okay. Remember the orientation of the PVC valve. That's going to be our guide. It's not quite there. I have to climb on. There we go. Hand tighten first. There we go. Let's see. Bear with me here for a second, guys. Again, I gotta climb up and lay down. Now, just want to get these snug. Okay. We need to tighten to 8 foot-pounds. I need a longer extension. Hang on. Gotta put the camera down for a second. I will torque that. I hear a little bit of a click. Now the extension is too long. This one I think we over torqued quite a bit. Okay. Let's get that PVC valve on. Hang on a second, I wanna... Okay, there's the PVC valve. Hang on, I gotta climb on top of the car again. There it is. Now we reinstall 2, 3, 4, 5. Backwards. Don't want to do that. And then one more in the very back. I have to climb on the engine again. And I'm not using the proper tools, just a step ladder. So the step ladder keeps sliding all over the place while I try to lay down. Okay. Okay, so now we tighten these up. I'm not going to torque these. Just gonna snug them up. They don't need to be super tight. They just need to stay on. There, it's tight there, just a little bit for snug, and that's it. Tight there, a little bit for snug, and that's it. Tight there, a little bit for snug, and that's it. Let's just make sure that's okay. And that's okay. And there you have it. So now we just put the tubes and wires back and we should be okay. So where are my cutters here? Here's one. There's the other. Click, and then we put this little blade in to secure it. Put this back. Where's my... Okay, there's that. Put this back on there, more harness. And this. Back on there. This wire harness, sorry. That wire harness back on there. Get rid of that. Did I miss anything? Did I leave any tools lying around? I don't see any tools. That's, looks like she's good. Can we fire this thing up? I think we can, but let me put my camera on a stand again. Hang on. Well, I don't see oil shooting out all over the place. I take that as a good sign. Solvent burning off, but I don't see any fresh oil. Okay guys, I will say that that is a successful operation. I hope that for the most part I got the angles right, and this was more useful than not useful at all. I think that there were a couple of herky-jerky spots there while I'm coming up and down the ladder that I will edit that stuff out. But there you have it, replacing the driver's side valve cover on a Chevy Avalanche Black Diamond LTZ 2013 5.0-liter V8. It's not a huge job, and if I can do it, you can do it. I think there's somebody else on YouTube that says that with a little bit more of a professional polish than me. Anyway, like I said, I hope this was at least somewhat useful to you, and if you're contemplating this, good luck, and we'll see each other soon. Bye. Okay, here's some bonus footage. I went ahead and I replaced the passenger side valve cover gasket. And I'm just going to talk you through it. I'm not going to show it to you. I did try to video it, but I couldn't get what I felt was a good angle on the camera, and so it didn't work out. A couple things. First off, down here, this wire harness was again deteriorated to the point where I had to replace the loom. And this loom goes up and then terminates on a sensor under the air intake. So that was certainly a pain, but I did replace that first. Again, the purpose behind that was to keep the potential for any debris falling into the rocker arms, exposed rocker arms, at a minimum. So we took care of that. And after that, it was basically pretty much the same as the driver's side. This connector has to be disconnected. The rest of the connectors don't have to be disconnected, but I did find that on the first two injector connectors up here, that it will be a little bit easier for you to maneuver the valve cover out if you remove the first two injector connectors as well. And the reason for that is that these wiring harnesses, you need to maneuver them around the valve cover in order to get the valve cover out of the engine compartment. Of course, the heater hoses here have to be taken out of this mounting bracket. The mounting bracket has to come off the valve cover, and these hoses are just going to more or less flop around and be in your way. You probably could tie wrap them if you really wanted to. I did not, and I was able to get around them enough to get the valve cover off, cleaned up, and reinstalled. So you've got over here, where am I here? Over here you have one of those stud-based loom supports, so just a gentle tug and it'll come off. There's another one over here, gentle tug, it'll come off. And then the usual bolts or studs to hold the coil pack on, and then remove the valve cover from there. The only other thing that's worth mentioning, hang on a second, I want to take that cover off to show you something. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. First of all, this is again the wire loom that I had to replace. This is the connector that I'm referring to, where that wire loom ends at. I did take this connector off in order to replace the wire loom, and I think it will be easier for you to get the valve cover off if you remove this, but this can be a bit of a pain. It does have one of those locks, and you can't get your hand under there, so I used a needle nose pliers to squeeze the connector so that it would pop off. So you can do that at your option. But what I wanted to show you is this tube right here. All of these Avalanches are getting old. My 2013 now is 9 years old. It's got 111,000 miles on it. And while I was working in the vicinity trying to fix or replace the wire loom, I bumped into this little tube that leads to the air intake, and it's connected to the valve cover on the one end down here, and it comes up and connects to the air intake. I bumped this and I broke it. So it's gotten brittle over the years, and it was more delicate than I had anticipated. And with just an accidental bump, I snapped it in half down here. So be careful, and you might want to expect that to happen. And this part is would cost me, I think, $10, and I was able to source it off Amazon. So it was not a complete tragedy. Got it relatively quickly. And I made a temporary repair to the other, to the original tube, which I'll show you in a minute. but I just wanted to caution you, this tube has to come off in order to replace the valve cover, because this end down here is attached to a tube that runs into the head off the valve cover. So you're definitely going to have to remove this thing, and just beware that you're dealing with old engine parts that are probably brittle from all of the heat and cooling cycles, and there's a risk that this could break. So be prepared for that. I think that's it. These are the injector connectors that I was referring to before, that you may find it easier to maneuver the valve cover out if you remove this connector and the connector next to it. And again, these are locking. You see that white or manila kind of covered tab, that's the lock. Pull that up first, then you squeeze the connector, and it pops right off. No big deal. Again, be cautious, because all these plastics are getting brittle for all of us. So then from there, again, it's just a question of getting the 5 studs off and dropping the coil pack down as a unit, and then removing the 4 nuts, or the 4 bolts rather, from the valve cover, and then popping the valve cover off and pulling it out. And again, up here where these wire harnesses are, this was the trick in terms of getting it to clear the oil dipstick, which does not have to be removed in these wire harnesses, and by removing the injector connectors and this connector up here, it's a lot easier to maneuver these wire harnesses around the valve cover to get it off. So that's it. You don't have to do anything here. This is a 2013 Black Diamond LTZ, and the automatic transmission dipstick does not have to be disturbed in order to get the valve cover off and back on. So you're all good there. And so that's the adventure. And it took me several hours to do this side. Most of that was cleaning the valve cover after I got it off, and there was a break in between there, so it goes relatively quickly. I guess that's it for the passenger side. As far as that tube that I was referring to, let's take a walk into the garage. Here's that tube, the original one from the car, and that's what I mean when I say that it broke in half. And what I did was I took some fast setting epoxy, and I epoxied the 2 halves back together, and then after it had sufficiently set up, I wrapped it in electrical tape, and then wrapped the electrical tape with tie wraps to make sure that the electrical tape stayed where it was, since it is right next to a hot engine. And ran with this for about a week before the replacement part showed up. And so again, take caution when working with that, and also use this product to clean the valve cover, and the rest of it was that. So brake parts cleaner and a little bit of engine degreaser, and I cleaned the inside and outside of the valve cover with that, and it was pretty dirty. So it took a while, and it's just a question of taking your time and being patient and being thorough in terms of getting all of the gunk out of the out or off the valve cover. So that's it. And I hope you found this useful. If you haven't found it useful, then I'm sorry to have wasted your time, but I do the best I can. So until the next DIY repair adventure, I will see you soon. Bye for now.